International Disability Rights, Sara Minkara. So Amr Hassan Sayed, he completed 10 years as a correspondent with Al Jazeera Media Networks. He first joined the network as the youngest reporter at the age of 23 in the heat of the Arab Spring. Later, he moved to Doha, where he became the youngest TV presenter on the network. His reporting includes Cairo, London, Beirut, Tunis, Johannesburg, and other capitals worldwide. He earned his bachelor's from Misr University for Science and Technology and Mass Communications and pursued his first master's degree in journalism from the American University of Cairo. And this May, he will be graduating from the School of Foreign Sciences at Georgetown University with a master's in security studies. And we also have today our great pleasure of introducing President Biden-appointed Sara Minkara, our Special Advisor on International Disability Rights. In this role, Special Advisor Minkara leads the U.S. Department of State's comprehensive strategy to promote and protect the rights of persons with disabilities internationally. Prior to joining the Department of State, she founded and served as CEO of Sara Minkara LLC, which promotes authentic leadership and value-based inclusion. She also established Empowerment Through Integration, a nonprofit organization committed to developing a more inclusive global society and transforming social and cultural stigmas against disability. Special Advisor Minkara is a graduate of Wellesley College and Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government. She's been recognized for many contributions through appointments and awards, including honors from the Clinton Global Initiative, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Forbes 30 Under 30, Harvard, and the Vital Voices 100 Women Using Their Power to Empower retrospective. Internationally, Special Advisor Minkara has promoted disability rights, diversity, access, and inclusion in a range of countries, including Lebanon, Malaysia, Nicaragua, Rwanda, Thailand, and the UK. And I hope we get to hear some of these stories today. I would also like to give a big thank you to Hana Nasri, Special Advisor Minkara's sidekick and travel partner, who joins her on her journey towards advancing the inclusion of people with disability. While also lifelong friends, Hana first started working with the Special Advisor on this mission as the HR and Information Systems Director at Empowerment Through Integration, and has since followed Sara to the White House. So a very special thank you to her for making this panel happen. And while extremely grateful to have Special Advisor join us today, I also want to recognize how challenging this may have been in light of some sad news that we received yesterday, the passing of Judith Heumann, Special Advisor Minkara's predecessor, who served as the advisor to President Obama. Also known as the mother of disability rights movement, Judy was a lifelong civil rights advocate and truly an inspirational and international leader in the disability community. After suing the New York Board of Education and becoming the first teacher in the state of New York to use a wheelchair, Judy went on to pioneer and develop many legislations, including the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the Americans with Disability Act, the Rehabilitation Act, and the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. So please join me for a moment of silence as we honor Judy's legacy.
Thank you so much, Sara, for this moment of silence, and thank you for everyone. Before I hand it over to Ahmed, I'm just going to say a few words on Judy Heumann. You know, as Sara mentioned, she passed away yesterday around 2 o'clock, and Judy was a mother to so many of us, a mother, a grandmother, a woman that really transformed change to so many lives, individuals, legislations, policies. And she's someone that anyone you ask, what is Judy to you? She was a support, someone who empowered you, someone who believed you. I met her when I was actually in college. I was a sophomore in college. I was doing an internship in Washington, D.C., and my friend was like, oh my God, you need to meet this amazing woman at the State Department. And I went and I got to meet her. I was super excited. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Since that moment, she took me under her wing. She became a second mother to me. She's someone that would call me during my low times and my high times, if I didn't pick up the phone, then she'll call my brother, she'll call my sister, she'll call my mom, she'll be like, where's Sara? She cared. And I hope that she's left a beautiful mark in this world. And I hope we can all celebrate and remember the amazing impact that she did. Thanks so much, everyone, for taking that moment of silence. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Amr.
Oh, one more thing, sorry, before. So thank you so much for that. As we get started, we hope to keep this conversation interactive and engaging, exploring how Arabs back home and abroad can work towards creating a world of value and dignity for all. And so we'll have a couple of interactive components to this talk, and I really ask you to pull out your phones, get on the poll everywhere, and be engaged in the conversation, because that's the way that we're going to be able to come out of this having learned something with actionable items. So without further ado, I'll pass it on to Amr.
Shukran, Sara. This is all thanks to you, Yani, that we're running this conversation and having it. And also thank you, Sara. But before that, البقاء لله في جودي. And I heard the news last night, and I believe that your words speak loudly about how important it is to have this kind of mentorship in your journey. So البقاء لله. بس كمان عايز أوجه كلمة لكل اللي حضروا معنا النهارده. أنا عارف إن إحنا كان عندنا مؤتمر امتد لمدة يومين مرهق من حيث الأفكار ومن حيث or when it comes to the innovative ideas that we've all discussed and the conversations we had. But I still want you to endure this session with more and more questions that are honest and that are kind of, I don't want to say irritating, but please push the boundaries so that we can come up with solutions. This conversation can go two ways. Either the easy way of we all support the topic, we're all for the narrative, or the slightly difficult way, which is, no, we need to ask the most uncomfortable questions so that we can get to resolutions and answers. Therefore, we have some prompts that Sara thankfully is going to help us with. You can use your phone to answer these questions, and also, and more importantly, in person. Sara Minkara, we have actually two Saras, so that's going to be great.
I'm going to be like, which...
عندنا سارة أحمد وسارة منقارة. سارة بتحب الأسئلة. She loves the questions asked in person. Shout them, show exactly how you feel about this question.
Please.
And we can start actually by the first prompt, if you don't mind, Sara. So I'm going to read it out loud. Sara
okay.
Ahmed. Okay, how about we go Ahmed? Okay, Sara Ahmed.
That works. We'll go with Ahmed.
Okay, so if you see a person with a physical disability on the streets, what is the first word that comes to mind? And again, please, I invite you to be as honest as possible, even if it gets to uncomfortable wording.
So there's a QR code at the bottom of the screen. If you pull out your phones, it should take you right there.
And in the meantime, I'm going to ask you, Sara. Sara, أول حاجة إحنا the first time we met, I think it was 2 weeks ago or 1 week ago? I would say 2 weeks ago. And during that conversation, I believe that I came across that similar question, which is, how do you describe a person with disabilities? Because we've had a similar conversation in our nation's motherland, where in Egypt we say peoples or persons with determination, or ذوي الاحتياجات الخاصة, people with disabilities. What is the best way to describe people with disabilities, and why is it important to use the best and the most suitable terminology?
So I'm going to answer your question, but I'm going to do something a little bit different in a bit. So can you guys just clap your hands so I know how many people are here? Clap. Okay, great, awesome. Before we get started, I'm going to ask the question. We have an hour with each other today, and as Amr said, we want to have a very uncomfortable but authentic conversation. So can we just shout out, what do you hope to get out of this hour? Just shout your thought out. No need for mic, we can repeat. What do you want to get out of this hour? Yes, don't raise your, I'm blind.
No specific order.
Yeah. I want to be a better advocate. Great, what else? Get out of the comfort zone, great, what else? How do we make people get out of the comfort zone? Beautiful. What else? How do we hold other people accountable to disability right? Great. What else? And there was over there? Better understand ish? The struggles? Allies? Better understand the struggles, challenges, and how to be better allies.
Go ahead.
What is it? Great. Amazing. What else? Sorry, becoming more compassionate, and then the other one over there? Pushing for change. Couple more. Designing better accommodation. Talking about invisible disabilities. Insight on what is it like living with a disability. Empowerment. Addressing the stigma in the MENA region. Great. So, understanding all disabilities. Oh, I like that. Okay. Creating better structure so we can ensure equity for everyone, including people with disabilities. I like that. Employment for people with disabilities. Including them in conversations. So let me ask the question. Why are people with disabilities marginalized? Society has constructed systems in a way that are not inclusive and accessible for persons with disabilities. Why? Because they pity them, judge them. Not as, why? But why? See them as less. They need to be included, but why are they not included? Why do we think about including them? They're not considered normal. There's also a minority and large. They are the largest minority. Do you know how many people with disabilities are in this world? Any idea? 4 billion. Close, but not close. 1.2 billion. Okay? Okay, I like the answer. I like the answer. That's just the reported number.
What defines disability? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We're talking about all kinds, yeah. Yep. It's a good, when I say persons, it's a really good question. Persons with disabilities, and if you look up the term from the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, it includes people with physical, sensory, psychosocial, intellectual, cognitive, all kinds of disabilities, visible and invisible. And I'm now going to address Amar's question. Why don't we, I hear the terms special needs, which I hate, persons with determination, which is becoming common in the Arab world. Don't like that. Persons with disabilities is the term. And I want to ask the question, why do we not like the word special needs? Yeah, we're seeing them almost as different, as special, right? Mm-hmm. I did an interview recently, and I literally turned to the interviewer, and I was like, well, you have special needs. You are sighted. You need light to see. I don't need light to see. You have special needs, right? Who's defining what's normal and not normal? Well, exactly. We all, in so many ways, are creating narratives in societies, right? We might be creating a narrative towards disability. We might be creating a narrative towards different identities, but we're all part of creating these narratives. And this is why it's super important for us to recognize how we are part of creating these narratives, including when it comes to disability. Why don't we like the term persons with determination? Okay, so I'm glad. That makes me happy. It is becoming common in the Arab world.
You have at least 2 countries, UAE and Egypt, who have officially adopted this term. Yeah. أصحاب الهمم أو ذوي الهمم. That's a very good question.
I like you. Yeah. What does it mean? Well, so here's what this means. This term for the disability community. It means we're not addressing the elephant in the room. It means we're not comfortable using the word disability. It means we're not addressing the core issue behind our narrative towards disability. It means, oh my God, you're determined, great for you. You're blind and you're living your life? You're determined, excuse me? Exactly. It puts onus on
the person with disability. What about the rest of society?
well, that's a really good point, right?
They should be determined.
Exactly. It is ultimately, it's patronizing. It's putting the onus on the person with a disability. Let's be real. I am blind. I cannot see. I have a disability. I cannot see. Don't change that about me. I just want you to change how you're seeing my disability. That's what I'm asking. It's part of who I am. And something I'm very proud of. So let's embrace it. Back to you, Ahmed.
Sara, no, you are great. This is why I loved interviewing Sara the first time. Sara, the concept behind it is that there's a sense of there's sensitivity when it comes to these issues, right? And the Arab culture usually is a very polite, parentheses, is a polite culture where they feel like, I don't have to face you with the one thing that brings pain to your life. What is wrong with that narrative?
So why do we assume that thing brings pain to my life, first of all? That's my question. Yeah, I have a great life. What did you say over there? Sorry, there's someone said
What do you guys think about this?
You're because ostracized by society. But let me be real. When I would walk down the streets of Lebanon, right? My parents are from Lebanon. We used to go there every year growing up, every summer. And then I started my nonprofit, and the first country we did work in is in Lebanon. So I experienced a lot, right? I would walk down the streets, and I would keep on hearing the phrase, Allah yashfiki. At a point, I would turn to that person and be like, excuse you, Allah yashfik anta. That's when I was not as eloquent as a person, you know? But there's an assumption that there's something wrong in me, something that needs to be fixed. And that in itself, what needs to be fixed, to be honest. I always say curiosity through a lens of compassion. To Amr's point, we want people to be having these dialogues, these conversations, right? Yes, hold on, yeah, I'll turn to you. But we want people to have dialogue and conversation, right? But I want a person to come up to me and say, Sara, tell me about who you are. Who are you as a person? Don't take a certain assumption to guide those questions. Just get to know that person and let that person share who they are. Muna حبيبتي, go for it.
Muna أخت سارة يا جماعة
Oh yeah, she's
They gave me a mic. Sorry, I'm loving this. I'm Sara's sister, and I myself am blind. When I was in Morocco, all I heard is miskina. They thought that I didn't understand them.
Yes.
All I spoke was English, but I did understand them. And everywhere I walked, miskina, miskina. And I remember thinking, like, I almost laughed to myself. They don't even know my life. Like, I'm a professor, I'm running a research lab, I study pulmonary surfactants, I study lungs. Oh, I'm blind. Oh, I forgot to tell you that. I'm blind. That's why they were saying miskina. So, kudos to you, Sara. Keep on.
Let's give her the second round of applause.
سارة أنت رحتي العمرة قبل فترة.
Yes.
How was that experience for you?
That was so beautiful. You know, we were able to go to the Middle East for work a couple times. This last time, one of the countries we were visiting was Saudi. We had Jeddah and Riyadh. And in Jeddah, the consulate actually was so great. Our US consulate there was able to take us to Umrah. And this is my second time to go into Umrah. And I was able to go with Hannah. Where's she sitting?
قدامك.
Okay. This is my partner in crime. And You know, a lot of people talk about when they see Kaaba, right? And they see kind of, you know, for me, it's the feeling of being in that place and the beauty and the, again, we tend to focus a lot on the technical thing of seeing, but for me, it's more of the what the heart sees and how you feel. And it was one of the most beautiful experiences ever. And I'm so grateful for our consulate to take us there, to be honest. It was really beautiful.
It's amazing. How about the question of accessibility? And how did the Muslim or the affectionate community display that affection, and how did it make you feel?
So we actually met with the Ministry of Hajj and Umrah during my trip there, and we talked to them about disability and accessibility. And we told them about the twin track approach, and I would definitely encourage everyone to be thinking about this.
Safa wal Marwa.
Oh no, sorry.
Oh.
So
Afwan. That was
I like
not
this.
a
I like
pun.
where this went. Yes. No. So the twin tech approach, and this is a UNCRPD kind of approach to disabilities. One is you want to improve the standard of accessibility and disability to all experiences for everyone that's coming in, right? For Umrah, Hajj. But that's hard. But we need to keep on improving that the standard packages, whatever, is inclusive and accessible. But in the same time, they've created a disability package for persons with disabilities to be able to do Umrah and Hajj, in a more focused way, right? I'm a support of this twin track approach as long as the standard approach is still being addressed. But because it's taking time and it's, you have millions of people coming all at once, it's not easy. I never want just a one track approach where we're like, oh, here's a disability package and there you go, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Allow me to read some of the answers that we got for
Yes.
the first question. Again, the prompt was, if you see a person with a physical disability on the streets, what is the first word that comes to mind? The biggest word that we have is curiosity, and then different, ability, grateful, pity, strength, strong, live or live, ego.
Oh, ego, interesting.
Sorry, go.
Oh, go.
How did I read that? Ego?
I mean, I might have a big ego. I'm just kidding.
And I think that the second one is alhamdulillah,
Alhamdulillah.
which is a very interesting word and choice of word, and admiration and wonder.
Yeah.
Let's tackle the three words, alhamdulillah, admiration and wonder. How do you feel about these emotions?
So here's this is actually really fascinating, and it always reaffirms the narratives that we see.
Yeah.
One hand, when we talk about disability, and I want to address invisible disability in a second, but when we talk about and people see people with physical disabilities, there's this one narrative which was addressed, which is like pity, I feel bad for them, etc. That's very common, right?
Yeah.
The other narrative, as we call it in the disability world, inspiration porn. Oh my God, you're so amazing. Why? Because I'm crossing the street? Oh my God, she's married and she's a person with a disability. It's not yet the expectation that persons with disabilities should be out and about, living their lives, going to schools, having jobs, having families, right? It's not yet the expectation. That's what we need to change. I don't want to be called inspired because I'm living my life as a blind person. No, that should be the reality. Yes, call me inspired because of my work. Call Mona inspired because she's doing this freaking amazing research. I don't understand half of what she's doing, right? Inspired because of what people are accomplishing, not because people with disabilities are living the life of their life. Also, on the other hand, when a person without a disability marries someone with a disability, do you know what's the narrative? Oh my God, they're amazing. They're such angels. I feel bad for them. They have to take care of them. All of these narratives are impacting, And then the last narrative is the narrative, I'm grateful I don't have this disability. Alhamdulillah. And I think we should all be thanking Allah, right? I don't think that should always be the common narrative. But I always say, Alhamdulillah, that I am blind. It's actually been my greatest strength and my biggest blessings. So we should never make assumptions towards someone else's life. Be curious through a lens of compassion.
I have two confessions. أول واحد فيهم إنه I met Mona right before this conversation and literally verbatim asked her about what she's doing and she had to explain it to me. So this is how difficult it was. It's not only you. The other one has to do with Sara Ahmed actually. Last night at this conference hall, I asked her about where a specific session was happening, and she answered very definitively. And I was amazed, so amazed that I told her that, wow, you're so confident. This is the type of behavior that is so wrong. Why would you assume that I'm not confident? And why would you be amazed with such a trivial question and answer? Like you asked me where the session is happening, and I answered definitively. How many of you have confronted a similar situation where you felt that you are complimenting someone unnecessarily based on a form of prejudice that you have for them? Raise your hands if you've done this before.
Or snap,
clap.
snap, snap.
Snap. Yeah, I'm learning fast. So I see a large number of us, and this is the type of behavior that we're trying to confront right now. Now, that leads me to the second question, which is the identities. You have multiple identities, or not identities, I want to say intersectionalities. How do you categorize them? This is my categories in a non-ordered way. You are a woman, you are wearing a hijab, so you are Muslim, and then you are a person with a disability, and you are also American. How does that make you feel walking and doing your day-to-day chores, and also like walking into the State Department every day?
It's a really good question. I mean, yes.
Let's start with the orders of identities.
The orders, like what is my...
Like what's more important?
What's more important? Oh. What's more important?
Let's skip that question. Let's move to the second question.
This is an existential question. Is it better to be a woman or a person with a disability? Anyways, but yes. Sorry. No, but here's the thing. In grad school, I remember when I was at the Kennedy School, one of my favorite professors, he told me, Sara, you're going to have to deal with this thing. You're going to enter a room, you're a blind Muslim woman, right? Visibly. And there's going to be automatic assumptions towards you. And also, you're usually the youngest in the room. And when I started the State Department, yes, I was young, blind, a person with a disability, which is good for my job, actually. You have to be a person with a disability to be the special advisor on the rights of persons with disability. So I think that's a good thing. But, I was young, I'm Muslim, I'm blind, I'm a woman, I'm, of course, American, of Arab origin. And there's always going to be assumptions. And he told me at that time, Sara, when you enter a room and you're confident of what value you're going to bring forward, those assumptions are slowly going to start changing. Because, we do face on a daily basis ageism. We do face sexism. We do face ableism. Let's be real, those narratives exist. And how much do you let those narratives impact how you see yourself? And how much do you actually say, no, you're not going to dictate my worth and value, and I'm actually going to be able to bring my value forward. But here's what it takes. It takes a lot of self-reflection and self-understanding. It takes a lot questioning your own self and being curious and compassionate and asking the question, are the narratives around me impacting how I'm seeing myself? And there's moments where it's There's moments where, I doubt whether I'm bringing the value forward or not. And I think this is where it's constant. I always ask myself, and when I do these workshops, pre-government, I used to run these in the dark workshops, and I say, there's two things we should always be doing. One, how do narratives impact how we see ourselves? But on the other hand, how are we part of creating those narratives? It goes both ways. Because a lot of times when you're dealing with certain isms, sometimes you bring then those things forward as well. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, it did. And that takes me also to the second question, which is speaking about these isms in your trip to the MENA region. You've been to the region, you've been to many important capitals, and what have you seen in terms of people's engagement with people with disabilities that's on the popular level and also on the governmental level?
I think that, I'll give you guys an example of a situation that I experienced this over and over again, and Hannah will remember this. There's now a lot of laws out there, in a lot of countries that says companies need to hire X percentage of persons with disabilities, like their employees. Quotas, right? That's becoming everywhere. And then what ends up happening in certain countries, and we were in a country recently in the Middle East that companies would hire these people because they get fined if they don't. They would put them on payroll, and then they would tell them don't come into work. Why is this the reality? That means we're not addressing the core issue. Quota is not going to address the core issue. What's the core issue here, guys? Ableism, yeah. Part of it, yeah. Lack of accommodation, definitely. Stigma. We are not seeing the value of persons with disabilities. Ignorance, and then what did you say? They're used as tokens. Accenture came out with a report a couple years ago, that says businesses that hire persons with disabilities actually helps their profit margin, their bottom line. There's a value, guys. But companies are not seeing that. We need what?
More solutions. People with disabilities can contribute to this.
Yeah. But we're not seen from that value perspective. We're seen as a burden. Oh my God, I'm not going to be able to make my building now accessible. How are a person's going to come in? How am I going to provide the accommodations, right? And they're seeing these technical challenges, but they're not seeing that if they actually see the value that we bring forward, that this is going to help them out. That's the common challenge that we see over and over again. I would be also in meetings with ministers of employment, right, or labor and social affairs, and they'd be like, oh my God, we have these amazing programs for persons with disabilities where we teach them how to make shoes. I'm like, okay, let me be calm in my response. Then
you don't have to.
Unfortunately, I have to be a diplomat here. And then I'd be like, my sister's blind and she's a scientist and a professor in bioengineering. And I'd be like, oh, good. But these shoes that, they don't internalize what that means. Because in some ways they're saying, oh, well, you're from the US and you have the resources and the laws and legislations and the capabilities. We don't. But let me be real. Yes, we all can. You need policies and legislations, which actually most countries have ratified the CRPD. I want everyone to look this up, the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Most countries have ratified it. We haven't ratified it, by the way, in the US. That's a different issue. But we have the ADA, which influenced the CRPD. But most countries have ratified it. But where are the gaps when it comes to implementation? Why? Because society is not demanding the implementation of these laws and policies. You need laws and policies, but you also need society narrative change. That's the work that we need to do.
And how do you bring about this change from a social perspective?
That's a good question.
In the Middle East?
That's a good question. Exactly, Middle East and North Africa.
And North Africa, of course.
I always ask the question, I'm going to ask the question here actually, how do we make that social change in the Middle East? Any thoughts? Integration into schools, okay.
Can we talk also about integration and engagement and what's the difference? Later, but I need to
okay. Yeah, make that, yes, that's a good question, yes.
Okay, more answers.
Awareness, awareness in the media, I like. What else? Social media, is that what you said? Yep. Workforce, but I'm going to ask the question, what leads to integration in the workforce and education systems? What? So, I'm going to bring all these points together, right? Equity, putting them on the table for decision making, policy. But I'm going to ask who creates narratives, who's influencing narratives in our societies in the Middle East and North Africa? People in power. Religious institutions, definitely. That's a key stakeholder. We talked about media, social media.
Academic institutions as well.
Academic institutions. family unit, communities themselves, also the entertainment industry. That's a big part. Here's what I do with the disability community when I engage with them and I have dialogues. I ask the question, who's not at the table right now who can make change for us? Because we tend to talk to each other. We need to be always asking two questions. Who else is not at the table with us? And what differently can we do? Because you know what? We need to make sure we're supporting families to have that narrative change. The educational system, so teachers and students. You know, I go to so many countries. Recently I was in a country where there's so much bullying towards kids with disabilities. We need to be able to really influence employment and labor, but who creates a lot of these narratives? We can change a lot through media and entertainment and social media.
طيب Sara, on that note of being honest, I feel that the lack of engagement happens because we're trying to avoid the bullying that you're trying to mention as well, and you've witnessed as well in these visits. And that's why they are changing the wording itself into people's with determination. Is that the right way to deal with it, to avoid the bullying that happens to our kids in schools?
This is where I would say to what this person earlier said, let's bring persons with disabilities to the table. When we're designing policy, when we're designing change, when we're designing even the term persons with determination, did we bring the disability community to the table? We need to hear their voice, their perspective. We need persons with disabilities to be able to politically participate and not just access the right to vote, but also run for office. We always just stop at the point of voting. Are they able to run for political office? Are they heard? So it goes back to, yes, maybe people are uncomfortable, they don't want to bully, they're uncomfortable saying the wrong thing or asking the wrong question. But first, bring people with disabilities to the table, and second, curiosity, enthusiasm, compassion. There's always a way to ask a question without any assumptions. I always make it very simple. A person can come up to me and say, Sara, oh my God, your life is so hard, how do you live it? Or, oh my God, Sara, tell me about your life. Same question, right?
Yeah.
But one has an assumption. We can all change that.
Great. There was a comment here. Yeah, of course. There was a comment here before about the invisible disabilities. Can we talk more about this and how we deal with it from a social perspective?
There's so many people in this world that have invisible disabilities. And I think this is, in so many ways, harder in the sense that, I don't have the choice to choose whether to reveal my disability or not, right? I mean, I have a white cane, I'm blind, you can tell. It's hard to hide that. Whereas with invisible disabilities, they have to choose whether to reveal it to the people around them or not. And that's hard. I've had so many people come to me and say, Sara, I'm not comfortable sharing my invisible disability to my colleagues because I'm afraid of how I'm going to be perceived and seen. I have heard that so many times. And this is why it goes back to this concept. When we talk about inclusion, it does not stop at the point of let's make sure they are at the table. I can be at the table, but my question is, am I comfortable sharing and expressing my true authentic self? Are you comfortable sharing your true authentic self at the table? A lot of time it's a no. Because we're afraid of how we're going to be seen and judged and perceived and heard. And this is where I say authentic leadership and inclusion is an important element when we talk about inclusion. How do we create spaces where everyone can bring their true self forward? I don't have a simple answer for that. But that's where we all need to be intentional anywhere we are, whether we're classmates with our students, whether we're employers, whether we're community leaders, think about authentic inclusion in your efforts.
I want to ask. It's
Thank
heavy.
you for that person. That
I
was
need to really absorb what you're saying because it is very transformative. I grew up in Egypt, and these are the notions that I personally grew up with, and this is why I feel even having this conversation, even the conversation we had 2 weeks ago, was quite sensitive for me because I haven't learned, no one taught me how to deal with these sensitive topics. And this is why I feel it is very important to ask these questions and ask whether or not we should be sensitive. Or if we are sensitive, how does that make you feel? And how should we get to, or what is the end destination? To remove that sensitivity and probably sometimes make some mistakes, some assumptions, or maintain that sensitivity until we get, as a society, holistically into a point where it's no longer a sensitive topic.
Yeah. I want to tell a really powerful story that I heard a few years ago. There's this guy named Kyle. I definitely would look him up, guys. And he's inspirational, not because of what I'm going to say, but because he's an amazing mountain climber. He's quadriplegic. He doesn't have arms and legs, okay? And he climbs mountains. That's kind of cool. I can barely climb a hill, but you know. So when he was 3 years old, he would always say when he was 3 years old, his grandmother would take him to the supermarket. And as people are passing by, they would turn and stare at him because he has no arms and no legs. So then what she would do, she would come up to that stranger and say, hey, do you want to say hi to my grandson? What is she doing here? She's achieving two things, two important things. One, she's pushing against that awkwardness that stranger has, because that stranger's like, oh my God, what do I do? How do I say hi? You know, this is awkward, right? She's pushing against that awkwardness and normalizing this dialogue. And on the other hand, she's signaling to her grandson, don't be ashamed of who you are. You exist in this world. This is a very powerful, and that's what we need to do. When it goes back to families, families are the biggest, most important first change makers in a person's lives. And when you have parents that says to their kid, be who you are, don't be ashamed of your disability, this is part of who you are, it makes a difference. But when you have parents that they might do this because they're trying to be protective and they say, Sara, please don't teach our kids how to use a white cane because we don't want them to be identified as disabled and be stigmatized. What is that signaling to their kid? They're going to be ashamed of who you are. But I understand where they're coming from. Why? Because they're in that society and they're hearing that narrative and they're thinking that's how they're going to protect their kid. This is where we really need to help in a community level to support families to make sure that they're empowering their kids. Yes, go for
Please.
it. Mm-hmm. 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 Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. 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 Yeah. Yep. Yep.
What do you guys think? How should we manage or navigate these conversations that are sometimes uncomfortable?
I was saying, can you repeat the question just so, I don't know, that others can hear?
Yeah, so the question is the uncomfortable situations in which we find ourselves talking about the disability topic. How do we navigate these conversations? Should we navigate them with sensitivity, compassion, or avoid them completely and make it very casual and comfortable? What do you think? And please, again, this is interactive. We need uncomfortable questions. We need uncomfortable answers. Not need them, but we welcome them. Yeah.
Sure. Hi.
Hi.
Why are these discussions uncomfortable though?
Mm-hmm.
You know, for people living with visible or invisible disabilities.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question.
We're not uncomfortable. We're very comfortable with them. You know, it's our
Yeah.
life.
Yeah, that's a good question.
So, and also why is it also sensitive? Because we're not sensitive to it. We're عادي, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example to that. Please go ahead first.
Is it,
Yeah.
is it again sensitive because the people in power don't know how to navigate? They feel, is there a sense of shame? Is there a sense of confusion? Like,
Yeah, that's a good
That is
question.
a great question. Thank you for that. It is mainly because in these communities, I'm talking about the Arab region specifically, here you have that level of engagement between all the elements of the society, minorities and otherwise, and it is a work in progress here in America. Whereas otherwise, in the Middle East, Sarah can tell you about this, there is a complete disenfranchisement of peoples with disabilities. Therefore, you haven't been brought up in a way that allows you to have these conversations in a comfortable way and not even think about it. And this is why when she went to the MENA region, she found out that, wow, there is a lot to be done. And the reason why we're having these conversations here, so that you guys can take these ideas and turn them into applicable or some sort of ideas that can help these regions get to the point where we're having here in the US, where this is not even a matter of discussion. Like, why are you even asking this question? This is irrelevant.
And I'm curious to see, I mean, this is a really good question. Why are people sensitive? I'm curious to see what people say. Can you guys shout it out? Why is there sensitivity?
Please. Yeah.
Misinformation? They want to hear feelings? Yep. That's a really important point. They might not want to really recognize that they do have ableism, which a lot of people might have, right? And then, what is it? Well, they might not want to address difficult conversation. Mona? They project their fears. They project their fears. A lot of people have fear towards, oh my God, if this happens to me, I wouldn't be able to survive this.
Like they think, oh, she's blind, let me hold her and help her across the street. I really hate you. Well, that's what you want. I don't want that.
You know, all of this is super important. And how do we create a space like we're doing right here, where people are sharing? And it goes back to, I always talk about curiosity through a lens of compassion on both sides. You know, we need to be asking these questions with no assumptions, but with compassion, and vice versa. As this person said over here, we're not sensitive. I mean, like, I ask me, I'm fine. But to be honest, when a person over and over and over and over and over again assumes that I have a horrible life, at some point I do snap, right? I'm human too. But ultimately, you know, we want to be seen as people with value. And that's not what we're seeing. If we are seen through the lens of value, that we are people that can contribute, that shifts a lot of this narrative. You know, someone asked me, you know, I talk to managers a lot, and they're like, oh my God, how do I approach my employee with a disability to make sure that they have accommodations, right? They're afraid of being offensive, or they want to make sure they don't cross the line, and they want to be sensitive. I would tell managers, this is what you would say. And not just to persons with disabilities. Ask all of your employees this question: what do you need to thrive in this working setting? Give them the chance to share their own voice and what they need. Do not make any assumptions, but to everyone, not just to persons with disabilities. That opens up the door, and when someone says, what do you need, Sara, to thrive in this working setting? I don't feel like there's any assumptions. They're just asking me. Again, we need to figure out a way to have these constructive dialogues with removing these layers of assumptions.
Fantastic. Now we're going to have some questions. Please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Ola. I'm from Lebanon also.
Woohoo!
Yeah, I work in health education, health promotion. And one of the things that we find, people are uncomfortable about something when they are ignorant about it. So when people of disability are put in separate schools and they're not seen every day, so kids, they don't know how to handle this situation. They're uncomfortable. They don't know who is this person and what they do. So the parents don't know how to handle it. The kids don't know how to handle it. And everybody is stepping aside not to annoy them, like this person is an alien from somewhere else. Nobody tries to approach and they always do mistakes, or they just try to be silent. So we need to do something about that, like to get integrated, or what's your opinion about that?
I completely agree. And I think integration from the get-go needs to happen. Specialized schools doesn't really help. We need to mainstream. You know, there's an amazing school, if you ever have a chance here, when you're in Boston, there's a Henderson Public School here in Boston that does a really great work of mainstreaming and inclusive education. You know, inclusive education actually brings value to everyone. I'll give a very simple example. I was a math major in college, and I would have classmates come up to me and say, Sara, what classes are you taking next semester? I'd be like, oh, why does that matter? They're like, well, Sara, whenever you're in the classroom, the professor becomes a better teacher. Why? Because he had to explain things in a more articulate way for me because I can't see, but who benefited?
Everyone.
Everyone. That's the point we need to bring forward, that inclusivity brings value to everyone. And this is why mainstreaming, to your point, is super important, because it really shifts the narrative from get-go. And to be honest, when kids at a really young age, when they don't really have embraced, you know, any of these narratives, they're so amazing and pure, and they're very inclusive. And they come together and they figure out ways to play together and learn together. We need to learn from them, to be honest. Yeah.
Sara, why are we still having this conversation in 2023 about people with disabilities?
Because, not to make this controversial, I don't want to go down this path either, but we're still having conversation in the science and health world how to eliminate disability. We're still having conversations seeing disability from a point of being fixed. And I think healthcare should continue, you know, improving on healthcare, right? I'm not saying anything on that front, but I think that we as persons with disabilities, there will always be disabilities in this world, and we want to make sure we have a voice to be heard, but we're still seeing from a point of being fixed. And that's why we're still having these conversations. So we need to fix that.
All right, I believe that we have some questions. Please go ahead.
First of all, thank you so much for being here. And sorry if this is kind of long. I just really want to get your take on this.
Yeah.
So I recently went to a restaurant in Montreal that had, it was fully staffed by people that were visually impaired. And you had to eat in pitch black darkness. And I think it's like supposed to replicate the experience, but I wanted to, do you believe this is some sort of like disability appropriation? Or is it impactful in building empathy?
So here's, okay. Really good question. I'm not at all a fan of simulation of disabilities. So dining in the dark, those restaurants are great if they're just there to come in and have fun and, you know, experience a different way of eating. Great, that's fine. But when people go and leave and like, oh my God, now I know how it is to be blind. Oh, I know how it is, you know, oh my God, it's so hard. No, that's not the reality. So this is where a lot of the disability community are very much adamant in making sure that we don't want to create those extras where it's like simulation of disability, because as if people leave and they know what it is, right? So this is where it's really important to make sure what is the narrative leaving. I used to host these in the dark workshops pre-government. And, you know, where we blindfold people and they come together. It has nothing to do with blindness. It's all about when we remove the lens of sight, it allows you to focus on other, on more authentic inclusion. And I always make it clear in the beginning of these sessions, I don't want you to leave as if you know what it is to be blind. Do you guys promise me that? Because a lot of people will, through that experience, like, oh my God, it's so hard, I can't breathe. How do blind people live? I'm like, oh Lord, come on. You know, they live and exist. So really good question. I'm so glad you brought it up. Again, people that have been living with their disability for a while, they're living their lives, they've navigated, they're experiencing the different barriers in their systems, accessibility barriers. They know how to be more creative and innovative. don't ever assume that an hour or 2 hours means that you know what it is, okay? Thank you so much.
We have a few more questions. Please. Please start with your name first, if you don't mind.
We'll get you a mic, no worries.
Oh, no.
Yes.
And I can tell you that kids with disabilities are not being treated properly.
Yep.
And they are kind of like parked all day long. I mean, bon, bien sûr, there is a curriculum and all this stuff, but they're not treated properly. It is, I was going to say the word disgusting. The way the District D75 in New York is treating the students. There's
Can
not
you give
enough.
us an example, please?
An example, not enough, comment dire, educating the kids day by day. I had the chance of meeting a mechanical professor of mechanics, like mechanics, and he had the best time with his students. He felt that he was really doing something proper in the level of the high school. D'accord? And plus there is a labeling of the students. I would like you, Sarah, to to explore this, because there's a labeling of the students which comes with the race, divide. Like the whites will be labeled one way, and the black and students of color another way. So there is a lot of things to do here.
Yep.
And in our country, I'm from Morocco, North Africa. I know that there is no ADA structure in place, etc. And as you said, Sarah, many times, it starts by the family. The family, I've seen examples of family with twin. One went to regular high school. Her little twin is still with us. And when Maya came back to do a panel for the first year student college, her sister, who's still in the high school, sat down next to her. And that's an example of inclusion. But not everybody has this kind of awareness. So, sorry.
So true.
Sarah,
so true.
If you don't mind, we have two more questions.
Two more
and then we
questions.
have to
Can I
wrap it
just
up.
can I just say something?
Please.
I definitely recommend everyone reading Judy Human, who we talked about earlier. Her book, Being Human. She talks about her experience through the New York public school systems and how she's had to fight. And it's still a journey. There's a lot of great examples of schools here in the U.S., like as I mentioned, the Henderson School, but there's others where it's still a journey. There's a lot of work to be done here and abroad. And I think it takes all of us, and I say all of us in this room and beyond can be part of that change. So thank you so much for bringing it up. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And we have two more questions here.
Yes.
Please go ahead. Okay, we'll take her first and then we'll go to you. Thank you.
Hi, Sara.
Name first, please.
My name is Inaz. I'm originally, my name is Inaz. I'm originally from Jenin, but I'm coming from New Hampshire. And you were mentioning about the term special needs.
Yes.
And I definitely agree with you that it's, I would say a no-no. And I noticed that in my community, especially with the youths, that it's being commonly used. And I know you mentioned earlier, but just to refresh my our memory, how can we correct them to not proceed to use that term, special needs?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, it's, to be honest, it does, I will always ask the question, why do you think the right term is special needs? And it's interesting to see how people will answer that. And then that will result in having a dialogue and understanding that special needs is actually marginalizing them, pushing them to the side. And then when they say, well, they're so special. And I say, why do you see that they're so special? Well, so having that dialogue would be, if you have the time. I mean, I don't know, but it does take, to be honest, I always say people have good intentions, but they just need to be made aware. And be made aware of maybe even subconscious ableism that they don't even recognize, right? Because they might not even know that the word special needs is or like seeing them as inspiring or special is actually adding to that ableistic narrative. So it's a really good question. Thank you.
The very last question. Sorry about that. Of course, you guys are welcome to join us after this for an open and honest conversation. Thank you so much for your questions and for this conversation. Sara, thank you so much, as always.
I just want to say, Yeah, okay. I just want to say thank you guys. Thank you to Sara. Thank you to Amr. Thanks to Hannah, as always. And definitely, guys, keep on being part of that change. I really appreciate it. Thank you, guys.